Good evening and welcome to Nerds and Night. Back after our long break, just due to some technical difficulties with my system going down and also the toy show we had back on the 6th, I believe. So as always, I'm Kid Thunder DJ, joined by
Fire 47.
And it's good to see you guys again. Alright, so we're just going to jump into the show proper this week. It's been kind of a busy day and we're testing out, once again, new recording software. Hopefully, once again, we get one step closer to the sound getting better and this sounding more professional. And this is, from our testing so far, it does seem like we have a lot more control over mixing and raising volume when it needs to be raised and lowering volume when we need to. And hopefully that carries over to your ears and you finally like, share, subscribe, and or leave us an iTunes review, whatever, hopefully. As always, we are recording with people still awake because it's not quite as late as it should be, so if you hear any noise in the background, just ignore it.
Yep.
All right, so let's jump into the show proper this week. It's obviously a pretty big release for games this week.
Yeah, a few.
Yeah, Watch Dogs 2 is out.
Yeah, that hit.
Yeah.
Dishonored hit.
Dishonored 2 is out, which is getting great reviews. It's,
Is it?
Yeah, it's living up to and in some areas exceeding the first one.
Sweet.
For reviews.
I think I saw first couple, I think one of the first ones I had seen mentioned something about some issues on it, and I wasn't sure what the general consensus was going to be, but I'm glad to hear it's getting good reviews then.
Well, technical issues aside, I mean, a lot of these big, really in-depth titles end up with technical issues. I mean,
well, not even technical issues, just some people having issue, I guess, with the game would be a better way to state it, but yeah.
Yeah, but that happens. You're not going to please everyone.
Like I said, that was the first couple ones just day of, I think. So,
right.
Seeing, or hearing that, there's better reviews.
Right, there's always better.
The majority is nice.
Right, there's always better when you have the postscript effect, where you can kind of go back and revisionistly review things and take a step from there. So,
right.
That's another one. Tonight at midnight, as it's Thursday here, Pokemon Sun and Moon get released. And I was reading on, actually it was one of the old groups that I was in for Mario Maker.
Right.
People posting, being all, butthurt about getting banned because they had, and when Nintendo banned you, they ban you from everything.
Right, you are gone.
You are ghosted by them. You have a bricked machine that can play cartridge games. That's it. A lot of people posting, being pissed off at Nintendo, and when you read the thread, it's because they tried to jump the gun and get
some sort of hacked version, I guess.
Right, trying to basically get the more or less the Japanese version.
See, so I guess they got it already. So when I first heard this, I thought the game had been released, and they were being blocked after the game was out in their area, and had gotten copies of the game, because I remember stories of that happening about a year or so ago where Nintendo blocked a couple people for not doing anything actually wrong. So I wasn't sure if that was the same case here.
Yeah. I mean, and how much of this is just people trying to troll the internet too, so. But it was just funny. Now, a little bit of sad gaming news this week. I sent you the story. And this was, the story I got it from, I should say, was from VG247, but they've actually been accurate in the past. And that is Breath of the Wild, Zelda, looks like it's going to miss the mark for being an actual release title with the Nintendo Switch.
Right.
Again, the Zelda game is not a release title for a Nintendo system like it was, promised.
How many is that now? I was going to say, I think.
GameCube was supposed to launch with a Zelda title and didn't. The Wii was supposed to launch with a Zelda title and didn't. And the Wii U was supposed to launch with a Zelda title and didn't.
I didn't know when. I couldn't remember when Wind Waker or
no
Twilight Princess was released.
Twilight. Okay, all right. If you want to be technical, Twilight Princess, which really came out a little bit later, but no. Well, Twilight Princess on the Wii came out a little bit after its release, but still, that was already out on the GameCube, so it doesn't count.
Okay, but yeah.
And
the delay is kind of sad news. But.
Well, they were making this game for the Wii U, and in fact, in this article, it even says, the report that they got states that the Switch version of the game runs better than the Wii U version, and they upped the difficulty and stuff. So it is looking like it will be probably. I'm getting the feeling they're going to hold it off till Christmas. They say it's not going to make March, which was the Switch release, the estimated Switch release period. So I get the feeling it's going to be next year's Christmas title. So enjoy your year wait, Nintendo fans.
That seems like, I mean, it's possible and probable, but honestly, I think an interesting business strategy would be for them to do would be, if they can't make the launch title date, try and get it as a summer game, because summer games are really, summer's the drought.
It is,
so they could really kind of corner the market.
They could, and they'd be smart to do so. I don't think they're going to, unless the release is a flop, unless the launch is a flop
for the
system.
Yeah,
they won't go summer. There's too much, because it's not just the dollars you can make at Christmas when everybody opens their wallet up a little bit more. It's the prestige of having the hot item.
Yeah, true.
And that does count for a lot. So we'll have to see. But I think they need to admit they've stretched this game out a little too long, and that they're just trying to make money. And we'll see if they actually own up to that, or if this is just more Nintendo being Nintendo.
I mean,
and if it is, then Nintendo can kind of go up a rope, because this is getting a little annoying with them claiming games are going to be ready to go at launch, and then they're not.
Well, was it ever actually claimed, or was that the assumption?
No, if okay, I'll be fair and say it was definitely more
assumption based.
Not assumption, but definitely it just seemed more like they hinted at it than directly said. But I think if they could have had that thing ready for launch, they would have put it at launch.
Most likely. But I mean, you gotta remember, this is going to be a very different game for, the Zelda creators.
No, it's not. It's still a Zelda game. At the end of the day, it's still an action RPG.
But you still gotta remember, like, the whole world and everything is
right.
There's differences there. That
I think they just want a big time Christmas title, and it's a guaranteed win. Maybe. If they put it out at Christmas, it's a guaranteed win, which is fine. Hey, I am first and foremost in my life the guy who does what he does to make money.
Right.
So if you can make money doing that, Nintendo, God love you. If you could do that making money and give me some of the money, I mean, God love you even more. Because I don't like not having money.
Nintendo, give us free stuff.
Right, Nintendo, give us free stuff. Speaking of, I ordered the Total Recall board game.
Nice.
Yeah, it should be our, I guess, partner team card game, but still. It's basically a trumped-up version of Clue centered around the Total Recall episode of Rick and Morty. And I got my 2 other Meeseeks today. So I've got the happy Meeseeks, the kind of stressed Meeseeks, and the post-fight Meeseeks. So I only need the smashed head Meeseeks and the golf caddy Meeseeks.
I'm surprised there isn't one just intentionally made with the missing arm.
Mine does. Didn't you notice?
Did it?
Yeah, like his arm's missing at the elbow, and it's just all the white thread stuff. So yeah, it's
cool.
Yeah, he's really
he's actually got it nice.
Anyway, speaking of things coming out in the future, Lego has found the ultimate way from a kid who grew up being a huge Lego fan to get all my money. And it's that godforsaken Lego dimension. I mean, I made no secret about it when the Season 2 first set launched. I bought them all. This week, Sonic, the level pack for Sonic and the Gremlins team pack and the E.T. Fun pack are due out. Also, the next full movie pack is due out, which is Fantastic Beasts. That's where you get a whole new base to build off of, and
isn't that
you get like 7 levels. I have the Ghostbusters one now.
Isn't Fantastic Beasts the new Harry Potter?
Yeah, it's kind of a Harry Potter prequel, but not really like directly tying into them. It's more based on this book that exists in their universe.
Okay.
And was turned into a play, and we'll have to see how that turns out. Because if you remember in the last episode, we talked about how that's on pace to be one of the weakest performing Potter films. And also one other fun pack is due out this week, and that is Marceline the Vampire Queen from Adventure Time.
Yeah, that's Adventure Time.
Now, there's been some rumors about what's going to be in the year 2. The more or less sequel. And there was some pictures put out that sort of tease that one of the included sets next time is going to be Red Dwarf. Which, for those who don't know, and if you don't know, why are you listening to this show? Red Dwarf is one of the best, in my opinion, one of the best comedies to come out of Britain. Just a very funny show about...
What was the year range that show was out?
80...
I was going to say mid-80s.
To off and on all the way up until now, technically, if you account for series 10 and 11 in the movie. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Long-running...
Yes, long-running,
sitcom.
although it did have a huge break from the mid-90s to now. But still, it's, you know...
Would that be would you call that like a sitcom? Or
It is. It was a sitcom.
Or what would the
It was
genre be?
basically The Odd Couple in space, more or less, because you had the last human, Lidster, a hologram representation of his crewmate. They're, of course, polar opposites in personality. And then on top of that, you had Crichton. Well, first you had Hawley, their computer, and then it eventually became Crichton for all the sci-fi exposition to make the stories make sense. And then you had the cat as the comic relief. So one of my favorite shows, really well done show. And I really hope that they somehow put it into Lego D and they can get the original casted for the voice actors. And I'm really looking forward to see if that's a true story or not.
Yeah, I've seen a couple episodes here and there from when you would like find it online or something and just would have it marathoning for a while.
Yeah.
I've caught on to some of it. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, it's a great show. It's definitely worth the watch. And they, for as funny as they could be very thought-provoking in some episodes. Gunman of the Apocalypse is a good one about watching that kind of stuff. And
I remember one where the hologram wanted to be like a solid projection or something, hard light.
Uh-huh.
And it was like it was almost like a Pinocchio story. I want to be real.
Well, that was kind of the whole motif of the first two seasons with Rimmer, but there was a couple of chances he had to be... Well, first he had a chance to be on a ship full of other holograms. Not first, it actually happened later on. And then they found the hard light drive, and they found a few other things they tried to do. But yeah, that was still some cool things there. And the movie wasn't the best. Back to Earth was good. Series 10 was actually pretty good. I caught that thankfully before it rolled off of Hulu.
Yeah.
So Red Dwarf coming to Lego D. Hopefully they capture some of that early season humor, and it'll definitely be worth it. Moving into movies, though, speaking of the Red Dwarf movie, Last of Us. I've said it before, and I'll continue to say it. Probably the best story in a video game in at least the last 20 years. And hands down, the best PS3 game. From top to tail.
Yeah, I can pretty much agree with all of that.
Been rumored to be made into a movie for a while. Unfortunately, and this is according to IGN, that there was a press lunch for the home video release of Don't Breathe. And Sam Raimi was talking about...
Is that that's a...
movie. It's a movie.
Yeah.
He was talking about the status of The Last of Us. And basically what he said is I'm not going to read the whole story. You can find it on IGN. But the big message to take away is production's at a standstill.
Did they give a reason why, possibly? Or?
I'm sure he did, and I think he did, but...
Was there anything listed that you could find? As he rereads it, just to be sure.
No, I mean, I'm looking at it again, but yeah, I mean, there's nothing...
Nothing substantial.
Yeah.
I mean,
it looks like there could be some issues with rights. It's probably also who they're going to get to play. That is a very, very hard story to stick the landing on and translate into film, because half of what made that story work, there are going to be elements that Hollywood is going to shy away from. There are 2 homosexual characters in the game. You have Ellie herself, if they bring in the DLC story.
Yeah, and then you have... that's right.
The guy who helps them get the truck.
Well, there's that, and then Ellie herself.
Ellie herself, and then there's the guy, I think his name was Bill, who helps you get the truck.
Was he?
Yeah, because his partner who ran off, you find out later on it was a dude, and it was his partner.
Oh, okay.
In fact, Ellie steals one of their porn mags that's a gay porn mag.
Oh, that's fun.
Yes. So it was...
but between that and then there was the whole dude at the very end, kind of, that Ellie has to fight when you're controlling her in the Snow Mountains area. The one she comes across when the
that
guy's
would be...
introed.
Again, there would be... when you have the, cannibal basically attempting to either have sex with her and or eat her.
I was going to say, I don't think he was a cannibal. I think he was
a
rapist.
No, they were cannibals. They were... She wakes up in the...
Oh, yeah.
In the kitchen where they're... Spoilers, by the way. Where they're chopping up a body and chopping up to make food. They were...
Oh, yeah.
They were the They were the Terminus people of that game. So it was.
That's definitely like stuff that's going to be pretty hard for them to kind of move into if they want to.
Yeah, and I would love to see that story on the big screen, but it would be so hard to do. You would have to do one of two things, and I'm not a big fan of either one. You would either have to cut the movie and make it into two, which, no.
Yeah, that would be...
Because it would be a 3-hour movie without it, and I just don't think an at its core zombie movie is going to hold people for 3 hours, because they're not going to market it as this epic, dramatic story. They're going to market it as a zombie movie.
Yeah.
So half the people who are going to come see it have never even going to understand that it was based on a video game. And then they'll either have to do that or they'll have to cut so much out of it.
To fit the time frame.
To fit the time and to fit making studio execs happy and advertisers happy. And,
you're going to lose all your pacing.
You're going to lose your pacing. You're going to lose what developed these characters. You're going to have to make Ellie such a flat character. She's going to wind up being this character everyone hates. And one of the most endearing thing about her was, unlike most other NPC partners in games, she was actually worth having.
Yeah.
They kept her out of stupid situations. She was on the scale of Ashley Graham being the lowest.
Oh, God.
To, Tails from Sonic the Hedgehog, because he always seemed to show up at the perfect time with the plane. She was definitely closer to Tails.
Right.
So,
and one thing that definitely made that work was the fact that they didn't make her trigger enemies. So, yeah, you get the occasional funny moment where she'd, like, sneak along right in front of an enemy's path, and they wouldn't pay attention to it. Kind of breaks the immersion, but it keeps her from being a liability, which was
that's a big
godsend.
Thing. Although, I mean, I still thought it was so funny when everybody's like, clickers are so dangerous. I'm like, they're dumb. I threw Molotovs down and they would run to their doom.
Yeah, clickers, once you figure out kind of how...
Now, always have a shiv, because if they happen to catch you...
Yeah, that was always my strategy.
That game did the one thing that zombie games have been sorely lacking for years. You're bit, you're dead.
Yeah. And it's not even like... Because it's basically not even like they leave it in like a space where like if you get hurt you can survive. It's just an instant kill if they catch you.
Right. But that's because they make it very clear you're bit, you're gone.
Right. I still love the big ass like bloater ones.
Oh yeah, the bloaters are the best. They would just tear your head in half.
You would rip jaw from jaw. Like T-Rex style from King Kong.
That was great. And that game's ending. We're gonna flesh this out better in another episode, so I don't want to give too much away. But I don't want to call it a happy ending. It's meant to be more of a bittersweet, make you think ending. It's not, and there's a very big reason why that I want to talk about on another episode. So for those in the industry, we call that a teaser. But yeah, there's a reason why that I want to present a theory that's going to make you completely rethink that ending and what it really means for The Last of Us, as they like to call themselves in that world.
Yeah.
But yeah, so basically, takeaway from that is, according to Sam Raimi, The Last of Us movie's at a standstill. I'm honestly not as upset about that as I thought I would be, because there's just so much that could go so wrong, even more than a normal movie there, and I cherish that story so much.
Yeah, especially with just, video game movies in general. They're very rarely ever done... They very rarely ever do justice to their source material. Yeah,
when they first started doing them, here's the thing.
Half the time they were like cheaply ported over, like off seas.
Right, half the time they were done by Yuli Bowl, which is, he should just be shot.
Right.
Thank God he retired. And then the other half, the studios didn't figure out the same magic that was figured out with comic movies, and that was treat them with seriousness and just take the time to build the world so it makes sense.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping the first video game movie to really break that barrier and get themselves on the tentpole level of comic book movies is the Mortal Kombat movie. And if they do it anything like those webisodes, which supposedly all Kevin Tartakon, I think his name is, or whatever, is all still involved with it and everything. If they can do it like those webisodes, they're in. Even if it doesn't
I don't think I remember hearing much about this movie.
Even if it doesn't, we have the web series on DVD. Even if it doesn't make, box office millions, if they can just get the artistic abilities behind it and kind of give it even a little bit of that flair of a good Marvel movie or even a standard Marvel movie, they'll finally bring that medium on pace, and then you can give it to a good studio who knows how to do it properly, and then hopefully we'll get a rebooted Street Fighter that's good, because that Street Fighter is basically a fists western. That's what it is. You take away guns and you have fists, but you can still have this. That story is built to be a modern, either modern western or a modern Asian revenge story, and both of those could do great.
Right.
Western, maybe not so much. We saw that with Magnificent Seven. Great movie, but just it got some love, but not the love it should have, because it's still that stigma of being a Western. But still, that genre of movie could work very well for Street Fighter and be a great movie.
Since we're on the topic of adaptations, did you see the live action trailer finally was released for Full Metal Alchemist?
I saw that the trailer was out there. I didn't see it.
It was like a 30-second little mini teaser. It wasn't much. It basically just showed a shot of like some buildings, which kind of look like Italian buildings. I think that's where the setting was.
Makes sense.
A train.
Yeah.
Some transmutation, which the effects on the transmutation did not look too bad. And then you also saw Ed kind of clap and bend down, as well as I think it ended with like Al and Ed kind of like
I was just saying the takeaway shot that they always have from every trailer, still was the two of them standing face to face. So yeah, I saw that, and just the detail on that alone made me go, okay, there could be something here. Then again, like I said, I really like some of like the visual effects that was going on. You also saw, I think, like a chimera or something run across the ground, one of the mutated beasts. Yeah.
I think one of the things I'm not liking though is just the actor choice, because the guy for Ed just does not look anything like him. He's got like, I think he's Japanese. He's got this like dark,
they did Japanese
skin, and then his hair doesn't even kind of fit him right.
That's what bothers me about the era we live in, and I want to,
it's kind of that PC culture. You're afraid
right,
of
because
it's like
everybody pooped their Pampers about casting Scarlett Johansson in Ghost in the Shell. And don't get me wrong, if you can cast the best actor possible, who is the matching nationality of the character you want them to portray, do it. But that's what it is. It's a movie. You're supposed to be picking the best actor. And a lot of these animes, the characters are drawn to have a lot of Western appearance.
And especially, that's the real thing.
Especially Full Metal Alchemist.
Right,
Full Metal Alchemist, they're white kids.
They are quite literally based in an alternate era, alternate universe, Germany, I believe. They're quite literally Germanic descent.
Right.
So, quote-unquote, whitewashing here, as they would always quote it, would be completely fine and fitting for half of these characters. About the only couple that wouldn't make sense would be the Emperor Shing and Mei, the daughter, that little girl with the daggers, because they were based in around, like I believe, like a Chinese descent.
Right.
They would make sense for a character like that.
Right.
Or an actor like that, I should say.
Yeah, and I mean, it's to quote George Carlin, it's all bullshit and it's bad for you. It's just them. It's just people hand-wringing, and it's the social justice warriors who think everything is, a gotcha moment of, oh, look what you did. Now I'm going to tell everyone. And it's like, really, at this point, you really need to be smart about the media itself. And, if you did Shin-Chan with white people, it'd be kind of funny, actually, because that's the joke. But they couldn't do that. They couldn't make that joke, because even though that is what Shin-Chan is, it's them making fun of Western anime fans.
Yeah.
Basically all Shin-Chan is, on top of poking some fun at our country as a whole. Couldn't do that, because you couldn't do it the way that it would be intended in the way that it's drawn.
I was going to say, that just would not translate to real life at all. A lot of, there's just comedy moments and shit. But even still. Yeah,
you sorry for the drop out there. You couldn't have Ashen Bastard in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or just the ass dance.
Right.
That would just no.
When he pulls down his pants and he's playing with himself. Yeah. No. It would be awesome if you could. I mean, one of these, pay networks like HBO Go or Netflix needs to do a live action Shin-Chan show. I'll put $5,000 down right now. I mean, literally the word $5,000 because that's all I got. Not money, but I will put down slips of paper that tally $5,000 in words.
Here's some Monopoly money. Have
right.
fun.
Make it happen.
But yeah, things like that. It just kind of gets annoying. You mentioned Scarlett Johansson being casted there, and even she isn't really someone you can bitch about whitewashing in, because in reality, she is a cybernetic being whose appearance is entirely customizable.
Right.
So
now, and like I said, don't get me wrong. And I didn't mean to interrupt. I'll let you finish your thought. I'm gonna let you finish, but
that was about it anyway.
But the whole thing at the end of the day is these movies are. I get it because these movies are global properties now. America doesn't. You can't make a big CGI spectacular blockbuster in America anymore and just sell it to America.
Yeah,
it's got to work overseas. But the countries we. Hey, careful with that. Sorry for the mic binging.
Sorry, I don't know if you heard that too much.
We got to come up with a signal for you to show me when you need to adjust your mic, so I can mute you real fast, because you do this every show.
Sorry, I didn't realize it would have been picked up.
Well, yeah, you're touching the thing, picking up the sound.
Still, anyway, let's move on. We're delaying things.
And you're the one who got the actual high school diploma. Anyway, back to the point I was trying to make. Yeah, at the end of the day, the whole notion of this is, I think if the people who buy this from the other countries aren't complaining, and to my knowledge they're not, then let it go. You're just bitching to bitch, and we need to stop that as a culture.
Definitely.
The bitching to bitch era just needs to end. So, hopefully it does. And we've talked way too long. I had 2 minutes blocked out for this, and we've been talking for close to 10, so...
Sorry.
No, it's good.
Good banter.
Couple last topics here. The retro topic for the week is kind of an interesting one. I was looking around my list like I like to do, and found a bunch of characters, and this is always something really interesting to me. Characters who are coded to be in a game, and for whatever reason, they're not. And there's usually ways you can find them. If you know how to decompile what's on the media, you can find their information, or you can find them through a cheat device. And that was the one rule. You couldn't put in a regular in-game code to find them. You had to have a third-party cheat device. You had to have some kind of,
something that actually alters the game.
Right.
Like the files.
Now, I found a list here, and I want to see if you knew about any of these. Gojira in Fallout New Vegas.
Yeah, that was... I don't think I saw any of that, but it was the giant thing.
And a lot of people, I think, modded him in, so...
I mean, yeah, Giant Enemies wouldn't be exactly a uncommon thing for a mod to do, so...
Right. Now, here's one that I don't think actually was meant to be what people thought it was. I think everybody found the picture of all the other Bond actors in James Bond GoldenEye 007 for N64 and thought, oh my god, they were supposed to be in the game. I think the pictures were supposed to be for literally files. So, for an extras where you could go through and read up about each actor who had played Bond. I mean, no one knows for sure. But...
I was going to say, that probably applies more to the little Easter eggs you could find that just had the characters in the game. Or not the characters, but just the faces, because you could find that in a lot of other games where they would just have the cast or something in a photograph or just set up that you could find as a little Easter egg thing honoring them. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I remember there was a really pain in the ass one to do, but in Jak and Daxter 3, when you had like maxed out light powers and stuff, you could fly around.
Yep.
If you were on like the waterfront area,
yeah,
near the end or in the city, you could fly up and you could actually get to this weird little spot that you really weren't supposed to reach. But if you crouched inside of this like box,
yeah,
you would actually see a little shot of all the crew, and it was so weird. Like, how did someone discover this?
Now we're getting into a couple of them that have a lot of rumored characters that unfortunately either just didn't exist, or in the cases we're talking about, had to have a cheat device. Like Mortal Kombat 2, if you had a Pro Action Replay, you could make it where you could play as Kintaro or Shao Kahn, Smoke, Noob Sabat, Jade. For Mortal Kombat 2, I should say, you needed a Pro Action Replay for them. You could not do it with any other ways inside the game. You could fight them, but you couldn't play as them.
Sounds like what they did with MKX.
Yeah.
With a lot of the story villains.
Yeah, where they were modding the game, which I kind of wanted to count because it does meet the criteria. So yeah, in MKX...
I mean, MK as a general has always had, the bevy of hidden characters and stuff like,
but
who
many
are
of
they real,
them,
and then rumors.
Right, but many of them, even with cheat devices, weren't really playable.
Yeah.
NBA Jam Tournament Edition had a lot of crazy guest characters, and they're in the code, and there's existent video of them, but they were left out of the final release, and that was Mortal Kombat characters. There was 8 total characters. It was just, quote-unquote, too wacky. 4 Mortal Kombat characters, basically Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Reptile, and then Raiden. Gorilla, Grim Reaper, and a couple others.
I want to play b-ball with the Reaper.
Right. If he elbows you, you die.
Check. And then, here at the end of it is Mew.
Yep.
From the original Pokemon game. That one was a huge ass rumor that was never really a thing.
Right, and that's why I was kind of skipping some of these that are just rumors.
Oh, sorry.
There was apparently a glitch found to access the character.
And then I can't remember if it was for the first one or the later games, but there was also like that really rare event where like if you went out to this thing, you could actually get a code that would put it in your game, I think.
Yeah, that was crap too.
That
was all back to being crap. Another group of games that I remember having a lot of those instances, which suited to their nature, was wrestling. I'm like, oh god, here we go, wrestling talk. But yeah, It was true. And the reason why was you'd have characters like let me before we get into ones that you had to use a cheat device, let's go with ones that they thought were going to be a big deal and weren't. Raw for 32X, which was a re-release of Monday Night Raw for Genesis. So they were claiming there was a hidden character called Quang, who was Savio Vega, Puerto Rican man dressed as an Asian ninja type character.
Yeah. And
this is during the 90s when everybody in WWE, your gimmick was either a personality type or a job. Anyway, character flopped hard. Made it a month and was, out to be repackaged. Well, they put him in the game. Not complete, and you had to use this stupid code to unlock him. He borrowed moves from other players, like he used Diesel's finisher and I think Owen Hart's super move, because that was the first foray into adding, reality-breaking moves to a wrestling game. And it didn't work. It was bad, but that's a plot for another time.
Right.
And then the reason why they really didn't advertise him much and actually wanted but couldn't afford to take it off the box that he was even in the game was, again, he failed. And he was already off TV and only showing up to do jobs, as they say, when the game was released, which was really funny that, on the back of the box, is that Quang? And, of course, well, yeah, it's him, the job guy now.
No one cares.
So I had to put in a code to play as a job guy.
That's kind of funny.
Yeah.
So they basically had up a character that was dead in the series.
Right, and I was bringing that up because here's some other instances. Now, this gets into where they were removed, and some there's no way to unlock. Some you can do with cheat devices, but their code still exists. In WrestleMania, the arcade game, which was the Mortal Kombat ripoff, Adam Bomb, who was Brian Clark, I believe, one of the two famous Brians from wrestling, Brian Adams or Brian Clark, was in the game, but then, of course, he left, so he was taken out. In WrestleMania 2000, the crash test dummy that they show you demonstrating moves on when you're trying to pick moves in their preview mode, he was playable, which you had to unlock him with a gameshark, and then you had to create him as a female wrestler and then use a specific outfit.
Wow.
Yeah, it was very convoluted. And then this one's funny. All of the parts exist in No Mercy, if you know where to look, to create Big Show, who had just been sent away from the company for a year because he couldn't get his weight down. And what made it even more hilarious is you could tell they had plans to use him in a lot of the real life storylines they used in the game. Because he was all over the scene in 99 and 2000.
Yeah.
Well, not really having much time, they just stuck Stevie Richards, who was doing nothing at the time. The Right to Censor thing was coming to an end. He was just kind of drifting. They stuck him in the storyline mode. So, you have all these great moments like The Rock in every corner, McMahon in every corner for WrestleMania 2000 main event playing out with Stevie Richards being one of them instead of Big Show. And, he's actually in the title picture, which made a lot of my friends happy. Ken, who was on who was on the No Mercy play video, he's a Stevie Richards fan, so I'm sure that made him happy to see. But, it was really sad.
I don't think this one I know wasn't like a secret code game, but just for another weird one. Didn't Limp Bizkit star as like a...
Yeah, he was a hidden character. He was a straight hidden character. He wanted to be in the game because he was a huge fan of the product. He let them actually use Roland in the game because Undertaker during that era, during the American Badass era, and the couple of games previous, including No Mercy, had to use a generic theme song because at first they couldn't get the license right to use Roland.
Yeah. I remember that one. I remember seeing like the news article, or not the news article, but it was a top 10 list, I think. And I just found that like really cringy and funny.
Yeah. And wrestling games have their own weird life anyway, because there's, a lot of weird moments that also happen in wrestling games. And, we talked about like with WrestleMania, the arcade game, and Adam Bomb not being in it. Well, that wasn't the first time he got clipped out of a wrestling game. He was in WCW NWO Revenge. There was a lot of gimmicked wrestlers that were ripoffs of real foreign wrestlers, including him. And they had a version of his Wrath persona that he was going by in WCW that they were going to put in there, and they took him out, even though he was wrestling for the company. Now, if you have a GameShark, you can find the completed version of him, except he's wearing Sting's singlet and using a chokeslam for a finisher, but the character's there. And it was funny, because he finally, after 2 false starts, gets in WCW Mayhem, which was just terrible. So... Yeah. And I'm reading from a list that I prepared of these weird moments. Jailbreaker Bullnoli's ending in Fireflow Breezing Tornado is, he appears to be this barbarian wrestler, and he's actually a political or religious leader, and he lost his memory and only regained it through wrestling, which was like, really? Tag team wrestling, the idea that, you're constantly fighting the same tag team over and over again. So it's, kind of a reliving nightmare. But that's just more a limitation thing. So, meh. I already mentioned Raw's Mega Moves, which were, what was being presented as a simulation game had these gravity and reality breaking moves you could do in place of regular finishers.
That's fun.
Yep. And then TNA, of course, has to get in on the stupidity. Their game for PS3 had a story mode centered around a new character they created called Suicide, and then of course to promote him and to promote the game they made a real wrestler called Suicide, gave him a monster push in the X Division, all to sell a game that sucked. And it sucked, guys. I'm sorry. It did.
Jesus. Yeah, probably not the best name to go with for a wrestler, guys.
Right. Well, it's not even that. The guy playing him, guys, there had been several, but the main guy is actually TJ Perkins from WWE, who's been doing really well, or was doing really well in the Cruiserweight division, which we will get to in the wrestling section here in a few minutes.
Yeah, I'm just saying name-wise, because I'm just saying name-wise, it's...
But I want to finish out some of the other highlights on this list. WWE having a fighting game called WWE Brawl that never happened, which, even though it was like 90% complete, But I want to save that for another listing we're going to do about, fun games that unfortunately got canceled.
Yeah.
The idea that they made a hidden character in WWF Warzone called Head, who was literally head, gloves, and feet based on Al Snow's Mannequin Head.
Man, that sounds kind of funny.
Yep.
Sounds about as outrageous as, things like the slab of meat in the car from that Fighters Megamix.
Yep. A lot of crazy stuff. Oh, excuse me. So, yeah, and that was the funny thing is, and then there was other crazy stuff like in ECW Anarchy Rules, they had a blistering brimstone match, which was supposed to be their take on an Inferno match, but graphic limitations at the time, instead of ring ropes being on fire, there was just these, black and orange waves outside the ring that if you hit would make your character or your opponent disappear in a fireball. Stupid. Especially for those of us who are true ECW fans. A whole game built around, trying to kidnap Stephanie McMahon called WWF Betrayal for Game Boy Color, where all you're really doing is running around beating up referees and backstage officials. And, you can pick from 104 wrestlers, and then the 3 bosses of the game are the 3 wrestlers you didn't pick.
Wow.
Yeah. It was like, really?
That's a Game Boy Color game for you, though.
That is. That screamed that era. Either Game Boy Color or maybe early Game Boy Advanced, actually. Hang on. No, Game Boy Color. That's right. And then the last one I'm really going to talk about, because they kind of get in, some of the things I found were a little more goofily and really kind of out there things. A couple things, actually. One, the real humorous thing to me was WCW Thunder, which was not a great game. It was a complete rehash, absolutely unchanged version of Nitro, which was great when it came out, but didn't really have that staying power and has now largely been forgotten. And all the tweaks they made to Thunder were just not good. In fact, the only real in-ring tweak they made was adding this test of strength thing, where all you basically had to do was button mash the O button, and your opponent's energy would drop. So you do that 3 times, punch them once, and pin them.
Nice.
But the biggest derp thing is they added this just litany of weird, made-up, like clearly made-up people as unlockables, like a sailor or a mummy or a devil or a giant ape or a cow. And these are,
very cliche shit.
No, not cliche. These were like anthropomorphized animals, not a guy in a suit. So it was just terrible, which is kind of what you could describe WCW as there at the end. Just terrible. And probably the weirdest thing to me in wrestling games that really made no sense, because some of the stuff that were on some of the lists I found, if you isolate just that one part of it, is goofy. But when you kind of put it into the context of the story mode of the game or whatever, helps. Doesn't always redeem it, but helps. There was no redeeming this. Simpsons wrestling for PS1.
Oh, God.
Simpsons, that was an era of, we have an IP, we don't know what to do with it, let's make a blank game out of it. A wrestling game, a racing game, typically a sport game. Let's make a wrestling game out of it. Let's make a racing game. Let's make a soccer game out of it.
Well, it's Simpsons. They literally parody anything. They had skateboarding, they had wrestling, they had Grand Theft Auto, they had Crazy Taxi.
Yep.
They pulled everything.
And then, of course, their best-selling game, the game where they finally broke out and just did a level game that was kind of like the arcade.
Yeah.
Because the Simpsons arcade game was really good.
Yeah, there's that. That's always a good time.
Right. So that's that. And I wanted to use that as a nice bridge into wrestling, which we don't have a lot to talk about, thankfully. Just a couple key points, and then we can get out of here. Survivor Series card is pretty well set. I'm not going to go into the whole thing because I think, let me double check, but I think we're really scraping the wall here for as late as I wanted to do this tonight because of how late it already is. Yeah, we're really pushing the edge of our limit here. In fact, we're almost out of time. So, a couple big things. First of all, James Ellsworth's still not under a full-time contract. I'm happy with that. I mean, I love what he's doing, but I mean, once his angle's done, unfortunately, it's probably time for him to go. Or at the very least, disappear off regular TV.
Right.
Brock Lesnar appeared this Monday night on Raw along with
Yeah, I was gonna say we had their 900th episode of SmackDown, I think, right?
Well, yeah, that was pretty cool. And Undertaker, that was one of the things I was going to get to. Undertaker came back and very, very eerily in his own way hinted that, he's back. Like, he's going to be doing more on screen. I still don't think he's going to wrestle very often, but I do think you're going to see him make more and more on-screen appearances.
Yeah, let's make some commotion.
Like, he come out saying WrestleMania no longer defines him, and, he's back to take over.
Yeah, I was going to say, because Brock Lesnar kicked you out of it.
Right. So, and I'm always up for seeing more Undertaker. He doesn't have to wrestle for me to enjoy seeing him, so let's hope it works.
Right, definitely.
Oh, sorry, I had to get a drink.
Undertaker is always a fun character. You can't go... Okay, I shouldn't say can't, but you can almost never go wrong with him.
Right, he is a great way to save an angle. But getting back to the Brock Lesnar-Goldberg thing, first of all, Goldberg just looks smaller. And it doesn't help when you put him next to Brock Lesnar, who is bigger than he was when he got into the sport. Make your own steroid jokes here. And then in an interview after that, Goldberg's talking about how when he was, doing all the hype-up stuff in the ring, he tweaked his shoulder and he could feel it in his body. I mean, you look at Goldberg, he really didn't look like he aged well. Yeah. And he shouldn't have talked like that, because I know not everybody who's going to see Survivor Series saw that interview, but for me, that just like, you're admitting you're an old man. Lesnar, it's not like it's as believable as if even going against Triple H or another bigger guy that you could beat them just on your name. Lesnar's he's the last great wrestling attraction. So when you bring him in, you really need it to be against a guy who is believable and confident enough to take him on, and that really took some of that momentum out for me. I mean, I'm still interested to see the match. There is no way in hell Goldberg goes over, but it should be interesting to see. Yeah, so that's one of the more interesting parts. NXT TakeOver this weekend should be a great show. You got the Nakamura Samoa Joe rematch. Definitely want to check that out. I think if Joe loses, they should really consider bringing him to SmackDown. I think he'd be great to interject between the AJ Styles and Dean Ambrose feud. So, yeah. And then one last big item. Kalisto's going up against the Brian Kendrick at I don't know why I keep saying at Survivor Series for the Cruiserweight belt. And if Kalisto wins, the Cruiserweight division comes to SmackDown.
Okay.
I'm actually kind of hoping that happens, which a lot of people thinking it are, because that 205 show is going to debut after SmackDown on the network, so it makes sense. And honestly, I did a blog post about this I submitted to What Culture, actually, to hopefully do pieces for them, actually, kind of part-time.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. I mean, I just did it to see if I could even get them to look at it. I mean, I doubt anything's going to come out. I mean, you've heard this show, people listening. I don't think I stack up. But anyway.
At the very least, a blog wouldn't be that bad, though, because you certainly have well-rounded opinions.
Right. I'd always said that, unfortunately, the cruiserweights have become the new divas.
Oh, God.
And I don't mean that like, oh, my God, they're being presented as weak, but at the height of all the trouble with the Divas era, there was all of them being put into tag matches, and no stories really got to stand on their own, and it really just became the whole division shouting at each other and denigrated down into kind of high school type drama, which is exactly what happened to the Cruiserweight, because there's so many things, no matter, even with Raw being an hour longer, so many things happen on that show. It's just impossible to really add something new.
I was going to say, to compare.
Right, and let people get invested. SmackDown doesn't have the same star power. Just like what happened in the last brand split. I mean, if you go back and you really look at the history of SmackDown, after Paul Heyman, they may never have done the same ratings, but SmackDown was the place for guys who couldn't do that immediate hit the ground running to get over thing to go and get over and to build a successful character that could then be taken back to Raw and rule. CM Punk went that way. Edge went that way. I mean, a lot of guys went that way and really made a name for themselves. And I think they could do that with the cruiserweights. So we'll see what happens.
Right.
I do plan to live tweet during Survivor Series. Just depends on time and work. So hopefully you can join us then. And I think on that note, that puts us right at the mark for time. So we're going to go ahead and get out of here tonight. So from Nerds Night Gaming, I'm Kid Thunder DJ.
And I'm Fire 47.
All right. Thank you very much, guys, for listening. And hopefully we'll be back on track to put up a show every week again. Thank you and good night.
Night.